go. We're back for another episode. Deb is not here tonight, but that's all right because we have an awesome guest. He is an entrepreneur, business coach for fitness companies, Caleb Fong. What's up, man?
What's up, man? How are you?
I'm good, man. Thank you so much for taking some time to join the podcast. I know we were just joking. Usually we're actually recording on a Friday night, which is weird for us. We don't typically do that, but the schedule got a little messy, but you were kind enough and flexible enough to hop on here last minute. So we appreciate you, man.
Oh, of course, man. I appreciate being on here. I just want to be able to connect. I know you guys, your podcast is fantastic. You've had some of my friends on, which is really cool. So I'm excited to be here, dude.
Yeah, it's funny. Usually we start off the show by letting people know how we're connected with our guests, and mainly, I was trying to think back. Like, I know we've been following you on social media, specifically Instagram, for quite a while. And today I was trying to think, like, man, as I was doing my notes for the show, I'm like, how did we come across your page? And then it hit me. It was a podcast. I actually
Okay.
heard
Yeah.
you on the Millennial Wave podcast
Oh,
a
yeah,
while
yeah, yeah.
ago, which was, I
Awesome.
mean, that was almost 5 years ago, wasn't it?
Man, that was a long time ago. That was a really long time ago.
I know. I'm like, we just started following you. It's like, all right, this dude seems kind of cool. And so we started following what you were doing. We follow I don't know Rachel, but I've listened to a few of her episodes. And again, we have some common friends with her too. But that's how we started, I think kind of knowing who you were. And then we started following you through some different, from there on. And
Yeah.
so that's pretty much how we're connected, man. I'm sure a lot of people are connected with you the same way through social media.
100% random connections, especially in Sacramento. People are always doing cool projects, and it's cool to see.
Right, 100%. Well, and you mentioned when we first connected on in the DMs, you mentioned like Paul Piercy, who's a friend of ours. Yeah, actually, the 2021 guest of the year last year.
Oh, cool. Yes, yeah, I love that.
Yeah, well, we'll see, man, because you'll be going up against him this year at some point. So it's
I'm
gonna be
coming.
a
I'm coming for you, Paul. I'll shoot him a text right now. I was just texting him like yesterday.
hey, man, you've got to. Someone's got to. He has an incredible following of people,
Yeah,
and they really showed up last year. So,
I love
um,
it.
yeah, man, we got a lot of common connections. I think Trevor Fong was
Yeah, one hundred
another
percent.
one.
Yeah, yeah.
No, is there any relation there?
There's not. There's everyone always asks. We always joke around that we're related, but we're not actually
Okay.
related.
Hey, man, I don't know what that dude because that guy is so I mean, he's like the mayor of Sacramento. So I'm like,
He's well connected. Yeah.
the name's the same. Maybe it's a family thing. I don't know. But anyways, that's enough ranting about how we're connected. But before we jump into some of my questions, man, like tell us a little bit about who Caleb Fong is. Where did you grow up? How did you get to the place where you're at today? And just give us a little background.
Yeah, man, 100%. So I was born and raised in Sacramento, California. So ever since I was a kid, my family's here. All my friends are in Sacramento, and I kind of grew up off of seeing people that were quote unquote like entrepreneurs and not doing like the normal thing. And I had an inkling since I was a kid that I was going to do something different. I didn't know what it was. In my mind, I was going to be a superhero when I was a kid. So that was, I was like, well, I'll do something different. But
Who's
I
your
always,
favorite? Who was your favorite back
oh,
in the day?
Batman, 100%.
Is it Batman?
Yeah, they're literally on the
Oh,
laptop.
come on, man. Yeah,
The back of my laptop has a picture of Batman on it.
dude. You can't see it, but I got Batman bobbleheads. I have a Batman book back here.
Oh, dude,
This is
let's
already a good
go.
start, man. I love it. I
Yeah,
love it.
yeah, I love it. That shows you're a good, decent human being if you like Batman.
I have to be careful though when I say that because my wife's a huge Superman fan. It's like,
Oh yeah,
like I
yeah.
love her, but there's some
But
division there.
everyone has to have flaws, you know.
Yeah, I hope she doesn't listen to this. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry, didn't
But
mean to
yeah,
interrupt
man,
you.
no worries at all. I'll talk about superheroes all day long. So when I was a kid, I had a couple like card businesses at like garage sales, and like I always liked that, just like being able to do something a little bit different. So went to school here through high school. I went 2 years into community college, and then that's when I dropped out and I started my business. So at that time when I dropped out, I had not really any real idea what I wanted to do. I just knew that I wanted to not be there. And
Yeah.
I like being very motivated when I'm in something. And when I am motivated, I get very tunnel visioned about it. And I wasn't motivated at all. I didn't know what I was doing there. I felt like I was wasting time. And I just wasn't sure why I was there. And so I left. And once I left, I went into personal training. I started a business, and then it just took off to kind of where we are here. So I don't know if you want me to go into all of that, but that's sort of where I started from in terms of where I grew up.
Yeah.
and now it's a crazy, crazy life.
Yeah, for sure. And we're going to jump into that in a second here. But I have to ask. So you said you were selling cards. You're talking about
Yeah, like
like
greeting cards.
seriously?
Yeah, 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 yeah. I
No
would go to
way.
I would go to like my own garage sale. I'd go to my any garage sale that I saw, and I would just be like, "Can I sell my cards here?" I was like a little.
Really?
I was probably like, oh man, I was probably like 8 or 9 when I was doing that. And then like the very stereotypical entrepreneur, like selling lemonade. I was selling greeting cards. I was trying to sell my own stuff like toys and whatnot, just like as much as I could. That's like the first kind of memory I have of actually like quote unquote entrepreneurship. And I didn't even remember that until my mom brought it up, like probably like 3 years ago. She's like, "Man, you've always been like this." I'm like, "Have I?" What are you talking about?
That's
But yeah,
crazy.
that's how I started.
Gotcha. See, that's funny because my initially, I thought that I was thinking like baseball cards, basketball cards, Pokemon
Yeah,
cards. Like when you said
yeah,
cards, I was thinking like collector's items like that. But you were literally talking about greeting cards. Like you were out there
yeah, dude. I was making my own greeting cards, just slinging them out there at
slinging
garage sale.
Mother's Day cards and Valentine's Day cards. That's not a bad
Yeah,
business.
yeah,
But
yeah.
you know what's interesting about that though? I feel like anytime I talk to an entrepreneur or anytime I listen to a podcast or read a book about someone who has that entrepreneurial mind, I feel like
Sure.
there's always like when they go into their backstory, there's always that thing like their parents are saying, "Oh yeah, by the way, you were trying to sell our fancy china." You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Or
right.
you guys were trying to
Oh, no.
sell this or that. Like it's like there's something inside of you guys that's just naturally wired that way. Like do you feel like that?
I mean, I don't know exactly. It's weird because like I do agree that all entrepreneurs somehow have this desire or this drive to do something off the beaten path with that. And I never really thought I had that until later on. Like it was a tough journey for me to become an entrepreneur. It wasn't
Hmm.
anything easy by any means, and like it didn't come easy to me. I just always knew since I was like a kid that there had to be something more than what I've been seeing. And I had thoughts when I was literally like 14 of like, this can't be the only route. Like, I can't just go to school. It can't be the only thing that happens. I go to school, I get a job, I retire when I'm like 65, and then I die. I'm like, that can't be all. And that must, I mean, listen, I was watching superhero cartoons and superheroes and all these things and seeing like these people achieving these feats. I'm like, I feel like there's something to this. Like, I just always had an inkling of like there must be something else, and so I think that's honestly what drove me to do this. Not necessarily the entrepreneurial spirit, but more so just like there has to be something more, and I want to find out what that is for me because I feel like I'm destined for that. And I was like, I feel like everybody's destined for that, but I'm gonna go ahead and try this out. So that's kind of how I feel about it. But I do agree that entrepreneurs in general have to have something about them that sticks.
Yeah, well, maybe it's that motivation, that internal motivation, or that desire to, like you said, you have to do something, and you can't just be stuck in the normal 9 to 5 grind that some people. And I've always said there's no disrespect to that, but some people I think
Agreed. Yeah,
would have a really difficult time being in that box. And I think mentally for themselves, for the people around them, it's not going to be great. Like you're not going to be a fun person to work with, and
100%.
so you know what I'm saying. So that's interesting. I do feel like there's that certain drive inside of the entrepreneurs. But it's
Yeah,
interesting too, because, and I'm sure you've experienced this multiple times, and you probably still experience this to this day, even though you're successful. I feel like that sometimes it's a hard thing for people to see though, too. Because
it's
when people see
very
it, they don't quite understand it because you can't quite quantify it, you can't
yeah.
quite define it because it's always changing, it's always fluid, and you might be doing one thing one year, and the very next year when someone sees you, after a year, they're like, "But you're doing something completely different.
My
What is
entire
going
life.
on here?"
Yeah.
So like what is that like for you dealing with that? I mean, not that you owe an explanation to anybody, right? Because
Sure.
it's your life. But like I'm sure there's people that kind of question like, okay, so what is this all about? Like what is this entrepreneurship thing like? Like do you get that a lot, that pushback?
I got it a lot more in the first about probably 3 or 4 years of owning my business, and then it sort of trickled off, and it truly was a point where I guess it was proven that like, oh, this is a real legitimate thing that you're doing, which is totally fine because like, and I would say at first I'm totally offended by it. I was taken back. I'm like, man, what are you talking about? Like, this is a real thing that I'm doing. Like, don't you see how successful I am? Really trying to prove the point
Right.
until I realized that that was not the purpose of why I was doing this, was to prove to other people why I was successful, or if I was successful. And that was honestly such a big light bulb moment for me, and really tearing down that ego. Because what I realized, with that happening, when people asked this, and I was like, why am I getting so upset, and why do I feel the need to be so defensive about this? And when reality, when I was trying to put the blame on them in my mind, I was like, hold on, this is my ego that's happening right now. This is my ego that's being attacked. And I was like, I need to drop this. And so then when people did ask, I was really able to take into consideration how they were thinking about things, because this is different. This is not the norm. And if anything goes outside of the norm, we question it. I do the same thing, right? Everybody does. And so I started to really think, I'm like, well, let's take a moment and realize that everyone else seeing this from the outside sees this as something that is not the norm of society, what most people do. So of course it's not going to make sense, and it's not going to be quantifiable. So when I understood that, that's when I was able to handle those situations a lot easier and really not have it affect me. But for the longest time, I would always joke, people would ask me like, are you still doing that little fitness thing? And I was like, my business, like,
Ooh, that's tough.
and it's an ongoing joke with a lot of my entrepreneur friends, a lot of my fitness coaches friends they get the same thing. Are you still doing that fitness thing, that, are you still doing that workout thing? And I'm like, yeah, the business,
The legit business, yeah, that makes money.
yeah, 100%. Yeah, yeah. So I was used to that, and that was a very common occurrence, and I still get it sometimes. But I think at this point, it finally hit a line where it was proven, and I can remember specific instances with specific people where I saw a click, and I was like, okay, cool. Like we're at an understanding now, and that was really cool. I mean, I got emotional a bunch of times when like my closest friends came together and finally were like, hey, like you've been telling us about this for so long, and we finally understand now. And I'm like, oh geez, okay, cool, that's awesome,
Yeah.
that's really cool. Because I kind of gave up on that, a long time ago. Caleb's doing his thing.
Right. Yeah.
But I'm eternally grateful for this whole process. It's taught me so much going through that evolution, not just as a business owner, but as a person in general, just being able to take away the ego from it and see it from an outside lens.
Yeah, well, I imagine criticism, hate, however you want to define it, is something that you have to kind of get used to as an entrepreneur, because there's going to be people that don't. I mean, the reality is there's some people in your life, in anybody's life, who doesn't want to see them succeed. They would rather see you fail. I mean, we see that all the time. And it's even like, even when I would imagine, tell me if I'm wrong, but like based on what I see, I know of some people that do the coaching thing in different areas, and different interests and different passions. But I feel like even when you make it, right, when you create the business and it becomes a legit thing, you think, okay, all of the doubters are behind me. But then it becomes a thing where it's like, well, it seems like everybody's doing the coaching business. Like, what makes yours different than it's like you can never escape it, right? Like, you just
Yeah,
like the mindset that you just spoke on is something that has to like constantly be on your mind. There's never a point where you get to that next level. It's like, oh, I can leave all of that behind me. It's like constantly following. It's like a shadow, man. It just
yeah,
constantly follows
no,
you.
you're 100% correct, because this actually relates really well to what I teach now with some of my clients, my coaching clients. Is like, your machine, or your business, or whatever you want to call it, needs to always be broken. You need to constantly be breaking it to find the cracks and fill them and make them stronger. And it's the same thing here. Like, something will always come up, whether you level up in business. Now people come in and go, well, you're doing this, right? Like, and everybody's doing this coaching thing. It's like, you made this much, but people make this much, right? So something will always come about, and that you're constantly being tested, which I think is sort of part of the fun of it.
Yeah, right.
After a while, it's like, well, what else you got? Like, we can attack this from different angles. But to come, you said something that made me think of a really important topic here, in terms of, I think that when you get into something like this, when you build your own business, when you are creating your future at your own hands, and by your own work, like, you have to understand what the purpose of this business is. What is it serving to you? What is the end goal of this to you and to the rest of your life? Is it just to say that you own a business because it's cool? I mean, more power to you, sure, whatever, there's nothing wrong with that. But at the end of the day, I would hope that most coaches get into this space because they want to serve people and they want to help. And if we're concerned about what other people see us as, and what we're doing, or what our brand looks like, or whatever it might be, are you really serving your purpose that you set out for in the beginning? Is it about them, or is it about the people that you're serving? And that's something that coaches have to constantly be reminded of, because it is a very prominent thing, especially with social media.
We just dropped the mic right there. That was a good soundbite, man. What else is there to say? Hey, let
It's
me
been a
ask
pleasure. It's been a great time.
hey man, the shortest podcast we've ever done. You nailed it. Killed it.
I mean, dude, I'm sure you guys get it too with like starting a podcast. I'm sure there's been people that are like, what are you guys doing? You're trying to be like this and do these things. But like at the end
Sure.
of the day, you guys have a purpose, and it doesn't matter what everyone else thinks at the end of the day, truthfully, as long as you are fulfilled by your purpose and what you're doing, nothing else really matters. And so, I mean, I'm sure you guys get that too. And, I feel like it's very common I consider like podcasts in the same realm of like entrepreneurship, right? Because you're creating something at your own work by your own will, and like it's up to you guys if it succeeds or not, and how long you go. So
Yeah.
uh yeah, I feel like you guys get that a lot too, probably.
Yeah, sometimes. I will say it's not as much as you because you're much more successful than our podcast, but
Yeah,
we're moving in the right
it's
direction.
all relative. It's all relative.
Hey, but no, but to your point though, yeah, you're 100% right. Like I think anything, because we've had a lot of artists on here, musicians,
Sure, yeah,
graphic designers, filmmakers, entrepreneurs, anything that has to do with business or creativity, I think is always subject to some kind of criticism or some kind of, commentary from the outside world that's going to make you sometimes, if you're not of the right mindset, doubt what you're doing. Right. But like you said,
totally.
you got to get beyond that if you want to be successful. Like you have to realize that, hey, I know that I'm doing the right thing, and I just got to keep moving forward. So I
I
think
mean,
it's great advice.
and it also, just as you said, like, with, and this is for anyone listening to, because I know this affected me so much, who are entrepreneurs or in the creative field, anything that you are subject to a lot of criticism for. The people that do criticize you, or people that hate on you, or whatever you want to call it, um, most of the time is simply and the reason why you feel like they don't want you to succeed. I wouldn't say they truthfully don't want you to succeed. I would hope that people aren't that terrible, and that like evil and ill will towards somebody. But
Sure.
I would hope in the grand scheme of things, most people aren't. But the reason you feel that way, I would say 99% of the time, is because it's a projection on an unfulfilled promise they made to themselves that they're seeing you do. They're seeing you fulfilled and do something that is out of the norm and extraordinary, or whatever you want to call it. And you best believe that everyone has that hope and dream inside of them. But most people are too afraid to step into that. And so when they see someone, especially close, a friend or family member, that's doing it, sort of like, oh man, I'm getting left behind. I don't want to feel like normal and like I'm not doing anything. So maybe if he sticks with me and stays down too, and stays on the same path I am, I feel more comfortable. So like, I always tell people, when you get hate and criticism, the first thing you have to do is lead with empathy. At the end of the day, you have to, and then you can challenge. But first comes empathy. So it's always like, okay, I hear what you're saying, and I'm sorry that you feel that whatever I'm doing is not is stopping you from doing what you want to do, right? But at the end of the day, that's a conversation with yourself where it's like, listen, this person wants to be doing something else and is not happy with their current position, so they're going to try to pull me down too. And it's nothing that is normally a direct attack. It's usually a defense mechanism. So we
Sure.
can't be ultimately angry at that happening. We just have to have an understanding, right? So hopefully that does help somebody, because like, if I heard that a long time ago, I feel like it would have saved me so much stress.
Oh, dude. Yeah, for sure. No, it's a good outlook, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that could use that. Not just, I mean, not even for their business, but just in
Totally. Yeah,
everyday life. Um, yeah, because I think it's just good advice. I think leading with empathy, as difficult as it may be,
it is.
in the long run, it's going to be the most beneficial for you.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
100%.
So, no, I think that's great. Hey man, I've got to ask, not to derail this too much, but I told you before we start recording, this is going to happen. Anybody who's not watching this and is only listening, behind Caleb is a stack of books, and they are color coded. Is that intentional?
All right, cool. So this will lead us into a totally new tangent about
That's what we do here,
where
man.
I am right now.
What is
Um,
going on here? Is this
yeah, yeah.
OCD or is this something different? What is
No,
going
these,
on?
yeah, these are all, these are all books. This is actually my brother-in-law's office. Um,
Oh, so I made
so
fun of
these
him
are all,
instead. All right.
yeah, these are all his books. He has
Okay.
some really cool decorations around, but
Yeah.
yeah, I'm in Sacramento temporarily right now, so I'm staying at my sister's house,
Gotcha.
and this is his office. But I'm nomading my entire life right now. Like I'm here temporarily. I moved to Austin for 2 months. I came back here for a little while. I'm going back to Austin, and then I'm going to travel the world in 2023. And I have no like permanent residence right now. So that'll lead us into a whole reason why in a little bit. If you want to get into that, I'm more than happy to. But
Yeah.
that's currently why I'm here.
Awesome. No, let's do it. I mean, we've had a couple of the guests we've had on the show. We've had Keone, um, Carry On. He's a filmmaker, and he's going to be going on a Europe trip pretty soon, and kind of just backpack around
Nice.
Europe. And then on one of our earlier episodes, we had his name's Brian. He's a teacher at Rio Americano High School. I believe he teaches Spanish, but he's been to he has a blog or a vlog and all that stuff on YouTube, and he's been to a ridiculous amount of countries. I mean, he's basically been to the majority of
Cool.
countries, and he just kind of travels and goes out. So I know people on that listen to this show are interested in travel for sure. So yeah, man, let's just jump into it. Tell us a little bit about like what this whole nomad thing that you're doing is about.
Yeah. So I wish it came out of like a good place. It came out of almost necessity for a few things. So I was in a 5 year relationship, and I was actually supposed to get married on September 10th. So about a little bit more than a month ago. And that relationship ended abruptly and here in Sacramento. And so, my this is my home and where this whole relationship was built. And so it came out of necessity for me to be able to heal. And so I left. And unfortunately, like my whole family was here or here, all my friends are here, but I couldn't stay in the city anymore to be able to heal the right way that I needed to.
Hmm.
So I left. And so I went to a place where I had a lot of close friends, which is Austin. I have some really good friends all over the place, which I'm very grateful for. But I had a good group of people in Austin that I knew I could be around during this time. So I moved to Austin. I got a temporary Airbnb short-term lease for 2 months. I got it on my way driving there. So what I did is I packed up everything I had. I sold everything that I had in my house. I got rid of my house. I drove from Sacramento to Austin, and that's ultimately what led me to being in Austin and going like, well, I could stay here or I could go anywhere. I'm very, very grateful and fortunate to have a career that I don't need to be in one spot.
Sure.
I already travel a lot as it is, so I was like, well, I might as well take advantage of this. And yeah, on my drive to Austin, I didn't have a place to stay, so I was Airbnbing at rest stops.
Okay.
Um, Literally, so two of my friends can attest. It was funny because I stopped in San Diego on the way there. I made a little route to visit some people. And I stopped in San Diego, and as I was at one of their houses, I was like, "Cool, I got my Airbnb. I got my spot to stay." They're like, "You just now?" But
You're shooting
that's
from the
sort of
hip.
yeah. I mean, that's how I've always lived my life. But anyways, yeah. So I drove there with just my car full of like my clothes and a couple personal belongings that I knew I wanted to keep. But everything else is gone. And so the plan as of right now, I again don't have another place to stay. When I go back to Austin on like November 10th, not worried about it. Everything will take care of itself. But
Sweet.
the plan is to stay through the new year. And then from there, figure out what the next step is. It might be a journey across the world and see as much as I can. But as of right now, the plans are up in the air. But that's kind of why I'm nomading right now.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, we may have to get you connected with Brian. And he can give you, if you ever have any question about any country, he can help you out. Um,
Oh, cool. Yeah, yeah. This would be great.
yeah. So that's interesting. Obviously, I didn't realize that obviously. But let me ask you this, and whatever you don't want to answer here is fine. You can just tell me to cut it, and I'll
I'm
cut it. But
comfortable talking about everything.
I feel like this conversation is
I'm a
going pretty
completely
well.
open book.
I know sometimes I have like little notes. I'm like, if the conversation goes well, maybe we'll go here. But I feel like it's a good conversation right now. So, um, one of the things that I was talking to our friend, and I don't know if you know this guy, Daniel Thomas. He owns Dynamic
I don't
Training.
believe so.
Yeah, he's a good dude. He owns a fitness. He trains athletes, high school and young athletes out in Rockland.
Cool. Okay.
He knows Paul. He's really well connected, really good dude. He was on our show, and he's also an entrepreneur. And he was saying he mentioned something about the toll that this type of lifestyle entrepreneurship, the business minded person, what kind of toll that can take on relationships, not just romantic relationships,
Yeah.
but friendships, family ties, all that stuff. Maybe you don't mind me asking, like, did that, was that a big part of what happened, or is it a completely separate thing?
It was completely separate, actually.
Okay,
I got very, and I do completely agree. I would say like it definitely adds a layer of difficulty and struggle to any relationship.
sure.
Um, but fortunately, that was not part of this. We
Okay,
ended very amicably. Everything was okay for the most part. I got lucky in the sense that I don't know if it was luck, but my first date with my ex, literally our first time meeting, I sat down and I said to her at dinner, and I was like, "This is what my life looks like, and this is what it will look like. If
yeah,
this is anything, if anything's going to develop here, if you're not okay with that, that's fine. I just want to let you know ahead of time."
yeah,
Um,
smart.
and how this is going to look. It's going to look unpredictable. It's going to be absolutely nuts,
Yeah,
but we'll have a great life, and it'll be a lot of fun. And she was like, "Let's rock and roll." So she was always supportive of that and like along for the ride all the way. So that never became a problem, fortunately. And I think that was largely due to our ongoing work of communication. If we could brag about anything, I would brag about our level of communication throughout the entire relationship and how it continuously improved and developed. And so, yeah, unfortunately, that wasn't a part of what caused that. However, I
yeah.
do agree that it can cause strain.
Yeah, when it makes sense, and I think you having that conversation on that first date is huge because, yeah, I mean, it's I think at first it could sound nice, right? It's like, oh,
Yep.
this life that I've created provides a lot of freedom, it
Right.
provides a lot of opportunities where we can do things that other people may not to or may not be able to because of either the financial stability
Yeah.
or because of they don't have flexibility or freedom with their jobs, right? It is a 9 to 5, and so there's a lot of exciting things about that. And then I think once someone gets the behind the scenes look, right, at what that actually entails and the
Oh,
kind of pressure and
yeah.
stress it puts on a person, it's like, oh, that's different than I
Yeah.
thought it was going to be. So, I mean, I think that's smart. It's probably something that every entrepreneur or any person who's jumping into business like this should probably that should be a definitely it should definitely be a conversation that should be had early on, not a
I
surprise later.
completely agree. I
Yeah,
completely agree because, and usually when something arises like that in the middle of a relationship that causes strain, it's because the expectation wasn't set up front. But it's funny when I had that conversation, I was broke. I had just started my business,
okay,
legitimately just started it, and I think this goes deep into like what we were talking about earlier of like what you believe you're destined for if there's something in the entrepreneurial blood and spirit. But even though I had just started my business, was not successful yet, I was telling her, this is what my life will look like. Like, I promise you, this is what it's going to be. And it will be crazy. It will be all of this. So I knew from that day, when I first started, what the journey was going to look like, even though it looked completely opposite at that time. There was many times, well, one time for the course of a few months where I couldn't pay our rent, my portion of rent, and she had to cover my rent for me. And then when I finally hit and it was and my business started to succeed, I remember that day. I've spoke about that on stage many times. Like, I remember that day for so long because it was at a point where I had been grinding so hard to try and make this work. And she was covering my rent for me. I was eternally grateful for that support. And then I made my first sale, and a big sale, and then like another one and another one in the same day. And I always tell a story that was so funny to me now looking back on it. I had like 9, I believe, sales in a row, back to back to back on the same day, consecutively. And at that time, it felt like a lot of money to me.
Yeah.
And I was like, listen, I was like, forget rent. I'll buy this entire apartment. I'm a king now. Like I've made it. It's over. Like I
That's
won.
awesome. Yeah.
Uh, and I'll always remember that because that moment humbles me. It brings me back to being very grateful for any level of business that I acquire now,
Yeah.
because at that time that was less than I mean, that one day probably netted me less than $5,000, but to me that was the most money I had ever
Yeah.
produced on my own in a
Right.
day for my own hard work. And now when I talk to my coaching clients, my business clients, and they're complaining about a low month for them sometimes being like 20,000. I'm like, man, do you remember the first 1,000 you made? I'm like, because I do, right? I remember
Yeah.
the first $900 I made. It's my first sale. I can remember. I can tell you who it was. I'm like, do you remember that? Because I bet that moment felt much better than you making like 50K now, right?
100%. Yeah.
Um, and that's something I think that all entrepreneurs and will probably agree with me on, that we don't talk about enough, because we get so caught up in you succeeding, right? And it's like when you believe that you're destined for greatness, your potential like will haunt you, and your vision will keep you up at night, and you won't feel complete until you succeed. But succeeding continues to get further and further away. We keep pushing that limit, and we never really remember where we came from and what we should be grateful for. Like, I mean, some of my friends would kill to have like what I considered a low month back then for their entire year, and I'm like, what am I complaining about? Why this is so ridiculous? And so I have that conversation with so many coaches now, and they're like, damn, dude, like I need to think about this more because it sounds absolutely ludicrous when I am complaining about this now. That was a total side tangent, but I think it's
No, I
important
love it.
to talk about.
No, 100, I know. I'm glad you said that because I think it kind of is something that we've talked about before. Like we just celebrated our 100th episode, a few episodes. This will be
Awesome,
episode
dude. Congrats.
106. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. And sometimes like we were joking before we start recording that one. It's like some people probably think like, oh, cool, 100 episodes, what's the big deal? But like I've always felt like, especially now, and especially everything that's happened over the last couple of years, anytime you have a chance to celebrate some success, whether it's big or small, I think you've got to do it because I think it's good. Like you said, I think it brings you back to a place of, hey, the work that I'm making and the work that I'm doing right now is important, even if it's way bigger and the numbers are bigger now than they used to be. Like you said, 20,000 versus 1,000. I think it's worth celebrating those things, and I think by celebrate, it's a weird thing. It's almost like for me when you celebrate those things and you take the time to do so. I think it makes you realize and appreciate where you were, right? Where
100%.
a lot of people want to say like, it's not that big of a deal, and they want to brush it off because like you said, they're focused on bigger and better things now, which is great. You want to do that, but I think it's important to take the time to either celebrate or just look back, like you said, and remember where you came from, because I think it gives you a greater appreciation for what you accomplished.
Dude, I'm so glad you said that. I hope you celebrated that 100th episode because that's so cool. It reminds me of one of my clients, and I'll call him out. He's a good dude. His name's Adrian.
Okay.
We had a conversation. We had a conversation leading up to him making his first $10,000 month as a fitness coach, as an online fitness coach. Super cool milestone. And so I asked him, like, "What are you gonna do when you hit it?" He's like, what do you mean? Because the conversation already was cool. So once I hit 10K, what's the next step to go to 20? He's
Yeah.
like, he's seeing all these other coaches at these really high levels. He's like, so what's the next step to get to 20 after that 10? I was like, hold on. What are you going to do for when you hit that 10K month? He's like, I mean, I don't know. And I was like, are you going to celebrate? And he's
Yeah.
like, should I? I was like, dude, I was like, well, I was like, let's think about this for a second. I was like, who would you celebrate with? And it opened up a really good conversation that I did not know would lead to, which actually circles back to something we were talking about earlier, which was criticism from outside people.
Sure.
He was saying that he didn't feel comfortable talking about money to his close friends, his close group of friends,
Hmm.
because he said they were talking about numbers that were no longer in his world, right? We're talking about their 9 to 5 jobs and
Sure.
like getting paid like $20 an hour. Meanwhile, he's talking about trying to make $10,000 in a month. And he was like, I just don't feel comfortable talking about that. And I was like, well, let me ask you a question. Have you talked about it? Or is this an assumption that they would be criticizing you and judging you and not supporting you?
Yeah.
He was like, I've never talked about it. I was like, so it's an assumption. And so I asked him, I'm like, well, let me ask you, these are your closest friends. Don't you think at the end of the day, no matter what their thought process is around entrepreneurship or business or anything like that, that they want to see you succeed and be happy? Like that, those are your boys. Like they want to see you succeed, right?
Right.
And he was like, 100%. I'm like, cool. So you know what you should do? And I was like, this is what I did. I was like, I didn't do it with my friends at the time because I had that same feeling and I couldn't push myself to, but I did it with my girlfriend. And at the time, I was like, I blew so much money when I made that specifically because I was like, you know what, more is coming, but I
Right.
need to remember this now and celebrate this. I was like, I encourage you. I was like, when you make that 10K, to take your boys out and go celebrate, pay for everything, like treat them and tell them how much you appreciate them supporting you in this and brag. I was like, brag a little, like tell them what
Sure.
you've done. And he told me what he did. He took Instagram pictures of it and videos of like he's out with his
Uh,
friends. And I was
that's
like, oh, he's
awesome.
doing it right now. And he came back to me so emotional about this. Like, I'm so glad I did this. I'll remember that day for the rest of my life. And he said his friends were so supportive. They were cheering him on. They were so happy for him. And he was like, I didn't expect that. You know, I never in a million years would have felt that level of support. And he's like, and now that I've celebrated that, he's like, I will celebrate every milestone in the future. And I guarantee you, Adrian will remember making that 10K month far into the future when he's at 50, 60, 100K, all that fun stuff. He's going to remember celebrating that 10K month. And I'm just so happy that he has that now.
That's awesome. Well, and I
It's
think
so cool.
I think it adds fuel to the fire too, right? Because like initially when he went into that, his next motivation was going from 10 to 20,
Yep.
right? Well, now it's still going from 10 to 20, but it's also, hey, I want to hit that feeling again where I was out with my boys,
Yep.
celebrating, feeling their support. Like that's just another thing that you can kind of add to that fire that's going to motivate you to get to that the next level.
Yep.
And just something you were saying too made me think like not only is it you're making that assumption, right? And they're more than likely going to be supportive and just show a lot of love to you. But it sounds kind of weird, but I think you're also running the risk if you don't share those things with the people that are closest with you and the people that you love. In a way, you're kind of robbing them of a opportunity to be inspired by what you're doing.
Agreed. Yeah,
You know what I'm
man.
saying?
Yep.
Yeah. So I think
I
it's
completely agree. I mean, that my friends listening, if they're listening to this right now, I don't know if they ever listen to anything I do, but like if they
please listen to this one. I'm not concerned about the other podcast, but if you can listen to this one right here, that'd be fantastic.
listen to this one, yeah.
Yeah.
If they are listening, I mean, I don't know if they remember this, but I remember it to this day, and I'll always remember it because you're completely right, and that that brought up that memory of like I had always been wanting to push them to just to exceed what they're currently doing because I told them a long time ago these are my friends since high school, so we're going on, oh man, actually a decade now, which is crazy.
Wow.
So for me, but there was a we were throughout that time, I told them at one point I was like my biggest fear is that in it's so funny I said this and I said in 10 years and it's now 10 years later. I told them in like my biggest fear is that in 10 years or far down the road when I am running my businesses, when I am out doing what I want to do and loving my life, that my friends are not next to me and that they are unhappy with their life. I was like, I would hate that. It's like one of my biggest fears. And so throughout this journey, whenever I learned something new, I was like, guys, look at this opportunity. Like, try this out. Like, you complain to me about your job all the time. Like, here's a way out, right? Here's what you
Yeah.
can do. One of my friends, he's really into cars. He loves cars. He's like, dude, my dream is to own like a shop. And I was like, great. And every time we were a little drunk,
Yeah.
this conversation came up.
Yeah. Yeah.
every single time.
Yeah.
And I joke with him about it now. Like every time it came up, he would come up to me He put his arm around me. He's like, Caleb, you got to teach me, like, how are we doing this? And I was like, great. I'll lay out this 5-year plan for you once again, as we did like 4 weeks ago. And I would tell him, I'm like, great, here's how you're going to open up your shop. You're going to do this, you're going to do this. I was like, 5 years, you have your own shop. You're like doing what you love, making like triple what you're making now. I was like, it's an easy game plan. I was like,
Yeah,
5 years of sacrifice. So like I would do that all the time. And, in their defense, obviously this is a risk. I mean,
sure.
going into entrepreneurship is a big risk, in some ways. But there was a moment in time where we were all out, and I will always remember this. Like I said, when I think about it, it gets me emotional. We were all sitting out at a local like bar slash restaurant downtown in Sacramento, and they were all around me, and clearly they had like talked about this prior. And one of them said to me, he was like, "Hey, listen, you've been telling us this stuff for the past like 8 years. We're finally listening." And I was like, I was like, holy shit. I was like, what are you talking about?
Wow.
Like,
Yeah, that's
so
crazy.
they started diving into like investing and how to and managing their finances and like side hustles they could be doing and like how to evolve in their current position in life. And I was just so taken back of like, I gave up on trying to prove anything to anyone so long ago, and that I forgot that they hadn't been, on board with that sort of say. Um, and so when they said that, I was like, man, like, it was just all worth it at that point. It was so cool to feel that. And the biggest thing though, which was really crazy, and I shared this at a convention with a bunch of fitness coaches, because we were talking about this exact same story. And I told them, I was like, as cool as that was, it didn't change a thing about how I felt about my business or anything like that, because I had already dropped my ego. I was like, it
Hmm.
was cool, but it didn't change me. I was like, I realized I didn't need that validation to be happy with my business and myself. It was cool. It was a nice cherry on top, but I didn't need it. And
Yeah.
I told them, I was like, you shouldn't need that moment. And I was like, I'm really happy that I had that moment, but if I didn't, I would be in the same position I am now. I would love them just the same. I would be just as happy. I was like, I didn't need that because I had already dropped this need for external validation. And so I was like, great to strive for that moment that you may never get, but realize you actually don't need that. So it was a cool, like very fulfilling, full circle life lesson at that
Oh
moment.
yeah, for sure. Well, that's the cool thing about those things too, is it's like it's again, it's helping everybody involved, right? Like you're learning something, they're learning something, they're inspired, you're motivated. So like that's the cool thing about those specific moments is
Yeah,
it's like you when you really look at it and break it down and dissect it, so many people are benefiting from it.
yeah,
And it kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier about this whole thing about coaching. Like the coaching has to come from a place where your whole goal is to serve people. So you could have very easily been in a place where it's like, hey, I'm just gonna flex on my friends all the time and they're stuck in these nine to
yeah.
fives and then, hey, watch this. This is what I'm doing. But you're like, no, like you want to inspire them and bring them along with you, which I think is an awesome thing, man. Um,
Appreciate that. Yeah.
I have a note here because I wanted to make sure, 'cause as I was kind of just scrolling through your Instagram to kind of take some notes. And since we've been following you, I've seen this a couple times. We're gonna completely change gears here, but I feel like I need to give you, I guess, a platform to get this off your chest, even though you've done it a couple times. Talk to me a little bit about your pet peeve because we just did a pet peeve episode. You know what I'm gonna say, right?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're
Go
talking about.
ahead. Go ahead.
So you're talking about when you're on a flight
Yep.
and the plane lands, and as soon as that button goes off, the seatbelt sign, everyone just tears off their seatbelts and flies out of their chairs and sprints down the aisle. It's my biggest pet peeve. And the reason, and so many people give me like sass about this, because they're like, well, my legs are tired, I want to stand up. I'm like, right, that's totally fine, do your thing. I was like, the main reason that I am annoyed by that is by that most of the time everyone just skips the line. They skip the order, and I was like, that messes up the flow of traffic and it makes it slow everything down. So I'm like,
100%.
stand up, do your stretch, sit your ass back down, and then and then follow the rows. It's not that hard.
Hey man, I'll be honest. Every time I see that, I do find it funny when you rant about that or post a reel about that because it's true. I have not flown. I'm sure I've not flown nearly as much as you. I haven't flown a ton, but
Yeah,
it is one of those things you look at. It's like this doesn't make any sense. And you're 100%
doesn't.
right. If people would just go in the order that the seats are, ordered, right, or set up, it would go very smoothly.
It would.
But, it's never I think it's like an impossible task. Like, I don't think you'll ever be able to
Oh,
convince
it's
people.
virtually impossible.
And it blows my mind. Like, especially I think for me, not being on that many flights, when I
Yeah.
see it, I'm like, was this normal? Like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
Like, why are we doing this?
It's
So
a, it's so funny because I this is a total. It's the last flight I was on. Um, Actually, the last few flights, which was really interesting. The person next to me, when everyone stood up, they were like, "Idiots," and I was like, I don't feel that strongly about it. But I was like, oh my god. I
yeah.
was like, you think this too? And they're like, this is ridiculous. They're just cutting the lines. I was like, yes, thank you. And then the last flight I was on, the flight attendants, which I thought was hilarious, they were at the front of the plane. They flipped on the seatbelt sign. Everyone stood up, and then they turned it back on, and everyone looked, and she was like, let's all wait until the front row goes first. And I was just like, yes.
Uh,
Thank
yeah,
you.
clap it up.
I was like, the flight attendant knows what's up. So I was like, we're off to a good start. It's progressing. I was like,
Hey man, and you never know. You never know with social media. Like that could, if you started like kind of doing like a little diagram of where this idea started,
yeah,
it could be with you, man. Like you could have been the one that sparked this whole revolution
could have
of
been
like,
the
hey,
one. Yeah, I
just
love
go
when
in
I
order.
get tagged. I get tagged so many times now with
I
people.
have
They're
no
like,
doubt.
thinking of you, and I'm like, I love this. Started
Hey
this
man,
revolution.
I believe it. I think it's probably started with you.
I
Now it's
love it.
yeah, I had to bring that up because I'm like, this seems to be a pretty big pet peeve. I like I said, I don't fly enough for it to be my pet peeve,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I had to give you an opportunity to share a little bit about that because
I appreciate that. I've never had a
yeah, man.
platform to talk about it, and here we are.
There we go. We try to mix it up when we can.
I love it. I love it.
But kind of segueing into we have just a few more minutes here. I want to make sure I'm respectful of your time because I know you're busy.
Oh,
But
dude, I'll talk to you forever. This is a great conversation, as much as you want.
I appreciate that, man. That's always good to hear.
Yeah,
Um, so going into the influence on you getting tagged and stuff, social media. So
yeah,
you do a lot of social media. You do a lot on social media. Um, we're trying to kind of increase what we do and try to post more. It's really tough.
yeah.
I don't. There's parts of it I enjoy. There's a lot of parts of it I don't enjoy. You do a really good job, and you
Appreciate it.
seem like you're really consistent with it. And I get the sense that you do it on your own. Is that right?
Yep, I do everything. Yeah,
Okay, so that adds another level of difficulty to
yeah,
that whole
yeah.
thing. I always get jealous of these higher level, whether it be a comedian, athlete, whoever it is, that they have people like a team that does that. I'm like, I
Oh
wish
yeah,
I
they
had a
have the
team.
whole. They don't ever have to touch it. Yeah,
It's so nice, but like I can tell that you do all of it, and it looks really good. And you get a lot of engagement on your posts, and all of the tips and advice that you give. Is social media something you enjoy? Is it something that is it like it's kind of like that food thing, right? Like I eat to live, or do you live to eat? Like,
yeah, yeah,
is
yeah.
it what is that relationship like with you? Because I know for some people it's kind of a weird thing, but do you enjoy it, or is it something you feel like you have to just do for your business?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I think I would have answered this much differently a couple years ago when because I used to not like social media because it was tough for me. But I think there's so many things that go into why social media is tough for some people. Um, Again, I would have answered this differently, but now I would say I love it because it's connected me to some of my closest friends, all of my closest friends, except for the ones I grew up with. It connected me to my last relationship. I messaged her on Instagram, and that's how we got connected. So I'll eternally
Okay.
grateful for Instagram.
Yeah. Shout out to Instagram. Yeah.
Shout out Instagram for sliding the DMs. Yeah, so like
Yeah.
I would say that social media can be obviously extremely toxic. Um, However, it's just like any problem. It's about how you react. You're not going to change anything about social media. It's doing its own thing and will evolve how it wants to evolve from the people up top. It's about how you react to the situation at hand. So you can either choose to let it consume you and let it be something really negative in your life, or you can choose to let it serve you. And so I say now I really do enjoy social media because, for one, the content I create, I enjoy creating. I have
Sure.
so much fun creating my content. Even if I'm not consistent, it's not something where I'm like, I have to go create content. It's like, what kind of content can I come up with today? Like, what's going to be fun to share? Can I toss on a wig? What can I do? Like, we can figure out whatever. So I
Yeah.
think, one of those big pieces of advice I would give to people, and as generic as it sounds, like, if you wouldn't enjoy watching your own content, then no one else is going to in the first place.
Sure.
And that means you need to enjoy the type of content you're making. And so when you do, it becomes much easier to create. And if you need to be creating content for your career, which frankly most entrepreneurs need to,
Right.
especially in this day and age, it is absolutely a necessity. Then that's something you're going to have to learn to do. And whether that be every day, whether that be once a week, you're going to have to be there. And so I would highly encourage people to take a look at their own content. And if you were scrolling by, would you be stopped? Would you be entertained or informed by what you're watching? So now I would say that social media, I really do enjoy. The people I'm connected with on social media are close to me. They're my good friends. Social media has given me, the position I'm in now, which is I'm eternally grateful for. And so as toxic as it can be, it can be an amazing piece of connection for humans across the world. So I think those are my thoughts on social media.
Yeah, no, that's great, man. And I think, yeah, 100%, man. It is one of those things that it can be incredibly negative, but it's also an amazing tool. And that's, I
It
mean,
is.
especially for us doing this podcast, we've reached out to a lot of guests through social media. We didn't know anything about them prior to that, but they just came across the explore page or someone recommended them to us. And then all of a sudden now we have this connection, to people in
So
Canada,
cool. Yeah.
Miami, all over the place. Um, but there's probably a couple of people that I can get you connected with too, like in Miami, that
Love it.
there's some
Yeah, I
good
love
dudes
it.
out
Dude,
there
how
that
cool
use
is that, right? That's amazing.
it. They're awesome, awesome guys doing some really dope stuff. Um, but yeah, it is like, I agree. There's a balancing act between the two things. And if you can find that balance and a healthy balance, then it's an amazing tool.
Yes.
Um, I have to ask, man, because one of the things I've noticed, again, just scrolling through your page, I feel like part of your brand and part of your content is the eyebrow raise. Is that intentional, or is that just like a natural thing that happens?
Yeah, that's a funny question. You know the movie Zoolander?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So when I was a kid, I watched Zoolander. I don't know why. I don't know why I watched it so many times, but
yeah.
I saw him do his like blue steel, right? His look.
Right. Sure.
And then I saw The Rock do his eyebrow, and I
I
was
was gonna
like,
say,
I can do that. And so like I just have done it literally since I was like 9 years old. And so progressively over time, it's just been something that I do in all my photos, and just it's one of my natural quirks now, I guess.
hey man, it's a solid eyebrow raise. Like I said, it caught my attention. I'm like, that's pretty solid. Like I had to ask,
Yeah,
like, if it's an
right.
intentional thing or if it's just like it's just what you do.
It's like
It's
a
pretty
it's like
good.
a muscle now, just like train it and then just boom.
It just happened right there
It
too.
just
Yeah. It's solid, man. I could not do it. So, but yeah, it's one of those things. It catches attention. I feel like
I
there's some
appreciate it.
branding, marketing thing that could be
A
there for
hundred
you.
percent. Yeah, we're finding the groove right now. But I mean, dude, that's social media, right? I think that's what's
Sure.
so cool is you are your brand, and
Right.
so like, yeah, I mean, dude, most of my it's funny like when I was fitness coaching, right? So I was fitness coaching for 6 years. I had my business online for 6 years. I sold it about, oh man, it's probably 8 months ago now. So I sold about 8 months ago. And then that's when I transitioned to business coaching for fitness companies.
Sure.
Um, but that first 6 years, I was building my brand, and I was selling people, frankly, for the first 3 or 4 years on me.
Yeah.
Um, which is something that I would also say I would recommend people not do. You need to build your brand. The brand needs to be you. You need to be there, but they shouldn't be buying from you simply because of you.
Sure.
You ultimately can't be the secret sauce of your business. What you offer and what you do ends up becoming the key. You are simply one person that can deliver it. But the brand behind it is you. So for the first like 3 or 4 years, I was primarily on Instagram. That's when Instagram was heavy. That's when attention was on Instagram.
Sure.
Right now, it's really not, and not as much at least. So on Instagram, I went heavy for the first 3 to 4 years, just being me, posting content, and that's how I built my business to begin with. And then for the next 3 years after that, 2 to 3 years, I transitioned off Instagram into other channels. But it started with the main social media platform, which is Instagram, at that time. And so, it's just a little side tangent about just brands and whatnot, but you need to follow the attention. And at that time, Instagram was the place for attention.
Sure.
And then now we have all these other ones that are taking over, like TikTok and YouTube Shorts and Facebook Reels. There's other platforms that are coming about where attention is going to be mass produced there. And Instagram, unfortunately, is just not the place where all the attention is anymore. And
Sure.
so we, as a industry and as entrepreneurs, understand, or you should at least start to understand, that attention is everything. And I mean, Mr. Beast on YouTube.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if you saw, but it's actually an insane period of time right now. A very pivotal thing he just did, where he's looking for. I think it's oh man, I can't remember the exact number. It's like $10 billion evaluation for an influencer led brand, and
Because
it's the
he
first time.
just sorry, he
Yeah,
just there was a report that he turned down a billion
yeah,
offer,
and so
right?
he went higher.
He went higher. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Now I'm really, if I'm trying to remember if it's 10 or not, but it's something massive where we've never really seen this level happen before, on a influencer base. Sorry, yeah, he turned down one. He started to seek 1.5. Now he's climbing up, and for a brand that was built off of YouTube,
Yeah.
built off of an influencer, is the biggest evaluation of a social media platform turned business, right, that
Hmm.
we've ever seen. And it's very, very interesting because this is the first time where it's going to be very like real in terms of influencer led attention turning the heads of big corporations,
Sure.
right? That's a big evaluation. I mean,
Yeah.
when you look at Shark Tank people, they're talking about like a $200,000 valuation, or like maybe
Sure.
2 million. This is 1.5 billion, right? So if we can really see what attention really does, and Mr. Beast is a great example of following attention. He started on YouTube when it was the biggest platform, and it's only evolved since. So he's
Right.
just stuck to it. I mean, attention is everything, and so that was a big side tangent on multiple different things, but that's pretty much my entire life. But hopefully that
That's what we do
serves
here, man.
some purpose to somebody.
Like I told you before, we hit so many different topics. I mean, we talked about airplanes, uh,
I love it.
your breakup, your business. We've talked
Yeah,
about it all. So we're all over the place. Your
yeah.
eyebrow. We talked about your eyebrows. So
But I mean, it's just so cool, right? Like
yeah,
that stuff to me is so fascinating because when we look at businesses trying to be built right now, I mean, like, dude, you could start something talking about what you're interested in, and it could turn into a $1 billion valuation on something. I mean, Mr. Beast started it because it was fun, because he wanted to film videos with his friends.
right.
It's just cool to see how things evolve, and it's like I never would have imagined where Instagram and starting this business where I wanted to just train people at a park, work with people in person, personal training at a park,
Yeah,
to now helping fitness businesses scale their companies. Like I don't even do fitness and nutrition coaching anymore. I never thought that would happen in my life. I never could imagine that, but it's thanks to the ability to utilize these tools the right way, like social media, that led me here. So it's really cool to see it happen like that.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Just got a couple more questions here for you before we get you out of here.
Yeah.
Kind of going steering it back a little bit more towards the coaching business and your business and what you do. What would you say is the biggest challenge for you as the business owner when you're trying to work with coaches, whether it's a client that you've been working with for a while, or maybe it's trying to bring a new client in, and then on the other side, that flip side, what would you say is the biggest challenge for the coaches that you work with? Like from their perspective, what challenges can they expect to face as they kind of embark on this journey?
Yeah, those are really good questions. Biggest challenge I would say for on my end, as a coach working with a coach to help them scale, um, and I feel like I guess I have two answers to this because the first one that came to my mind, and I was trying to think about like what instantly my gut tells me is the imposter syndrome of,
Sure.
you know, am I even qualified for this? And every entrepreneur talks about this, and I'm very grateful to be able to say that I think I have a good grasp on imposter syndrome because I've experienced it for like 6 years inside of running an online fitness business. You just learn to get better at it, better at handling it. It'll never go away. But I would still say it comes up when I'm trying to lead someone through their business because now I'm talking about someone's livelihood.
Hmm.
And I'm talking about the future of their livelihood, building generational wealth, right? Like we're talking about those types of things, taking care of somebody's family. And so that puts a lot of pressure in my mind of I need to show up for this person in every way that I can. And man, am I qualified to do so? Right.
Hmm.
So I think that's the biggest challenge is mentally because I feel really, really capable and confident in my abilities to lead someone. Whether that be them trying to make their first $10,000 a month or their first $100,000 a month. I work with clients of all of those revenue levels. So like I feel confident in that, but it's the mental component that goes into that. I would say the biggest challenge on the flip side as a coach is patience. When someone's trying to build their business, there is a fake level of urgency to become a millionaire overnight or to have a successful business overnight.
Hmm.
Took me 6 years, and it could take me a lot. Knowing the information I have now, it would have taken me much less time, but it took me 6 years, and in the grand scheme of things, that was nothing. And so, I think the biggest challenge that a new entrepreneur of any kind, specifically a coach, because of the saturation of this industry, as you said, everyone and their brothers are coaches now, right? When you look on social media, I mean, someone could lose a couple pounds and then say they're a weight loss coach, and it's super sad to see because
Sure.
I
Yeah.
mean those people, there's plenty of them, and they hurt a lot of people,
Sure.
unfortunately. I mean myself, this is ridiculous, but like when I was getting my personal training certification, my first one ever, I thought it was. Can I swear on here?
100%. So I meant dang man, I meant to tell you that beforehand because I always
No
feel
worries.
bad when people bring that up in the middle of the episode. It's like I
No,
should
you're
have
good.
told you.
I have like the biggest sailor's mouth, so I swear like all the
You
time.
can't
But
you
I was
can't
trying to
offend you can't
keep,
offend me
keep
or
it
our
contained. All right,
audience.
cool. Yeah.
So I grew up
Even
in
if I
locker
was,
rooms and dugouts, so we're
yeah,
good, man.
perfect. I love it. I love it. Yeah, good people here. So the
Yeah.
the first personal training certification I was getting, I knew was total bullshit.
Yeah.
It was literally a weekend certification. All the information that I was learning as I was taking the test, I was like, this won't help me. This doesn't serve anybody. I'm like, I don't need to know the bone in like my leg to help somebody lose weight. I'm like, I know this doesn't matter. And
Yeah.
then I was being told I could go train clients. And I'm like,
Ugh.
I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, dude. I was like, what
Right.
are you talking about?
Right.
And after a weekend. And so when I learned that, and I was in a big corporation gym that everyone knows, in California, if that'll give a hint. And so when I did that, I was like, these are the trainers that are like helping people with their health. I'm like,
Yeah.
this is terrifying. I don't want to help anybody right now. And so
Yeah.
I didn't. I quit that place, and I was like, I'm going to spend the next few years learning and like becoming a good coach, not one of these fake coaches that can just go train people for some money. And so, anyways, why did I start talking about that? I don't even know why I brought that up, but I was like, I'm trying to remember now.
Well, I think you were talking about, obviously you're talking about imposter syndrome, but then also being patient
Oh
as a
yeah, yeah,
client,
yeah,
because
yeah.
everybody, everybody's a coach and all that stuff. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There we go. Yeah, we rounded back. Yeah,
It
there's
doesn't even
so
matter,
many.
dude. That was
Yeah,
it sounded good. Doesn't matter where we started. It's where we end.
I love it. Yeah,
Yeah.
but no, that's perfect because there are so many coaches like that, unfortunately, that you know they get into online coaching because it is and so does entrepreneurship. It's sexy. It sounds
Sure.
sexy and appealing. You're going to be able to work from your phone on a beach and train all these clients. Well, first off, like hotspots suck for Wi-Fi, and like I mean,
Yeah,
let's just remember you need Wi-Fi to work on a beach, and
right.
most people don't have Wi-Fi, and hotspots suck. So like that's not the reality of the situation,
Sure.
um, not at all. And so people get into this because they think the next month they're going to be living this lavish life. They're going to be a millionaire. They're going to have this crazy coaching business, and they're going to be known across social media. It's not going to happen like that. And so I think or at least for the vast majority of people, so the biggest struggle that I see is people coming in with short-term patience, when in reality for their business, they need long-term patience with short-term urgency, meaning they need short-term urgency on the tasks that they need to do to accomplish their long-term sustainable business. And that's the biggest struggle because the picture has been painted from the outside that this industry or this profession is much different than what it really is.
Sure.
And just like how social media portrays all of the highlights of your life, um, people on Instagram or social media about coaching portray that as well. And to no diss to them, they're not going to, no one wants to work with a coach who says like, I'm struggling to get clients. I don't have anybody to work with. Like no one's going to want to work with somebody like that. So
Right.
understandably, they're going to show up differently. So I would say that would be the biggest struggle that I can think of newer entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs trying to grow at a rapid rate coming into working with somebody like me who works with business coaches. I mean, with fitness coaches.
Yeah. Yeah. That all makes sense. And I do feel like, some of the people that I've seen, some of the way they pitch it and some of the things that they highlight, because like there's certain things you want to highlight about why it would be beneficial to go down this road, right? Obviously the financial freedom is a big part of it, but I've seen a lot of people where it's very obvious that the financial part of it is your main concern. And again, I
100%.
I keep going back to it, which is important, but I think when you're trying to work with people, and you've said it multiple times, this idea of serving your clients and serving the people around you, I think if the authenticity and the genuine concern for people is always going to come out when you're talking to people, right? And so I think if anybody gets the sense that you're doing this because it feels like a get rich quick scheme, and if it feels like, hey, like I see you as a number, I see you with as like a
Yeah,
big dollar sign, it's never going to work. And I feel like the people, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not in the industry, but like I feel like the most successful coaches are the ones who you can truly and genuinely tell that they care about your success. The finances are
100%.
awesome, the freedom's awesome, but at the end of the day, they do want to see you succeed, and you can tell, you can
Yeah,
tell.
completely agree. And
Yeah.
it's funny that you say that, and people coaches really should really listen to what you said because it's actually a massive piece of business advice. People have to think about this. For somebody to be a coach and their main purpose being helping somebody, the best way that you can help somebody is by them being your client. And to be their client, they have to pay you. And so when it comes down to you wanting to help more people, guess what ends up happening? You end up making more money.
Right.
But
Right.
if you go into it with, like you said, I want to make all this money, right? But now you're missing the key ingredient to actually making the money, which is helping people. And
Sure.
so as a coach, those two things work synergistically, just as even they're extremely even playing fields. Because if you're not serving, you're not doing the task which gets you money. So I think it's really funny when coaches come in with that mindset of money first. I'm like, well, we're missing the whole thing here, because you make money by helping people. So you're 100% right. And listen, the public, or your prospects, whatever you want to call them, the people that you're serving, they are being pitched and pitched things every day by people across social media. They're being pitched by other coaches. They're being made offers by business coaches all the time, very sleazy business coaches. They're being pitched everywhere across multiple platforms, in person and online. They're getting smarter about what you talk about. And so they can sift through the bullshit that you are putting out to try and get them to pay you money. And I'll say that 5 years ago, it was a lot easier for people to get away with being shady in their selling. And so that's why I say, like, the public, I don't want to say is getting smarter, because that actually sounds kind of douchey, but like they're evolving
Yeah.
they're evolving their thought process around sales and around these cold outreaches, right? And I think it's a good thing, because not only does it level up the public from being taken advantage of, it forces us as coaches and business owners to level up our quality of service. So I think all around, it's a good thing that's happening.
Yeah, which makes sense. Yeah, and because the bottom line too is obviously you as a fitness business coach, you're helping your clients, your coaches, do the thing that they love doing, right? But you're also affecting the people that they're going to be affecting with their fitness business. So like, when you really kind of break it down in the amounts of influence, and there was a an organization that I was working for quite a while called Character Combine. We talked to coaches and athletes in the Sacramento area,
Cool.
and one of the speakers that came one year, he wrote a book called One in a Million, and the whole concept is that if you have influence or impact on one person, whether you're their mentor or whether you just have like a conversation with them, and that conversation maybe changes the trajectory of their journey,
Yes, I
well then
love that.
hopefully they go on, and the people that they interact with are going to have impact and influence on the people around them. And so at the end, if you can somehow like draw this line going all the way back through all the people that you influence through that one person, hopefully through your indirect influence you've impacted a million people, right?
Dude, that's so cool. I love that.
It's a cool concept. And
Mhm.
it's kind of what you're doing, man, because like you're having impact on individual coaches who are going to go coach
Facts.
people, and then
Yep.
hopefully those people through healthier lifestyles and life changes go on to affect more people. And so it's like it's cool that you're affecting so many coaches, but really, man, what you're doing is having a much greater impact even beyond that, which I think is kind of cool.
I appreciate that outlook. It is really cool to see that, and frankly, that is one of the reasons why I shifted over, was to help more people. And it took me to. I never heard it phrased like that. I think that's so cool. I really want to check that book out, and I'm going to go Google it after this. But what I realized was, like, the holdback from me, um, making the transition from fitness coaching to business coaching, was like, man, I don't get to help as many people anymore. And then my business coach at the time, who I ended up joining forces with when I left my fitness company, um, he told me the same thing in different words of like, well, hold on, you're still a coach, and you
Hmm.
do realize every person you help has hundreds of people they are helping. And if you
Right.
can help them do better, guess what happens? And I was like, okay. I was like,
Right.
this makes me feel better now. But I love that phrasing. I think that's so cool that someone could have that outlook. I wish I had that outlook earlier on. It would have made the transition so much smoother. So I appreciate that. That's really cool.
Yeah, man. No, it's appreciate what you're doing, man, and all of the help and the coaching that you're providing for people. It's awesome. I had a bunch of other questions, but we'll save it. Maybe we'll have you on next time when Deb is actually here
No
too
worries.
to give her insight and input. But um, before we get out of here, man, where can people follow you? Say someone's listening to this and they like, man, I need some help with my business.
Yeah.
Where can they reach you? Social media, all those different things.
Yeah, 100%, man. So Instagram is my favorite platform right now. I
Sure.
post to TikTok, and I'll be posting to YouTube and all these things, but Instagram is where I'm most connectable. So
Hey, look at that.
had to
Very nice.
had to toss that in there, you
Hey, man, we
know.
appreciate that. We like that.
So Instagram's where I'm most connectable.
Yeah.
It's first name D Fong, so Caleb D Fong on Instagram. I encourage anytime I'm on a podcast, and very few people take advantage of this or the opportunity. I will help you as much as I can. I will never ask you for a sale up front like this. Like, I will never push you to do anything. I'm just more than happy to serve and help. The amount of messages I have that are just like this long-winded voice messages of myself telling somebody how to fix their business and help them, it just goes on, and it's one of my favorite things to do. So if you are listening to this and you want direction on business, you are stuck on what you want to do with your life and your future, I love those conversations. If I can provide any input, I will. Anything you want to talk about that we've talked about today, I am more than happy to help you in any way that I can, even if it's just a conversation. So Instagram is primarily where I am. You can find me on there. Shoot me a DM, and I'm happy to help. And I'm looking forward to connecting with everybody.
Awesome, man. That's awesome. Definitely go follow Caleb. You know, even if you don't have any questions, just go follow him, because a lot of interesting stuff there. And like I said, he does a great job with the content and
Appreciate it.
consistent content too. So make sure you
You
go
can just want to
follow him
make
there.
fun of me in a wig. You can just watch me in my wig, and
Hey, yeah, exactly. Even if you just want to laugh, he's got
just
you.
laugh at me. That's fine. That's fine.
It's a multi-prong attack. So he's got you covered no matter what you
Right.
need.
I got it. Don't
So
worry.
make sure you go follow him, man. Thank you so much, dude, for taking the time to hang out. Like I said, we're gonna have this end of the year bracket, guest of the year bracket, so I'm excited. We got some heavy, I'm not gonna lie, man, we got some heavy hitters on this side of the bracket, on your side of the
Love it. I
bracket,
love
so it
it.
it could be a bloodbath in the best way possible, everybody.
That's
we,
great. I
we
think
love
that's cool.
everybody, but we also like competition. So
Yeah, man.
um
100%.
so yeah, man. But yeah, appreciate you taking the time, and good luck with everything. And we'll
Appreciate it.
continue to follow everything you're doing, man.
Hell yeah, dude. I appreciate that a lot. Thank you so much.
Yes,
If I
sir.
could, if I could just drop one thing for people really quickly,
Yeah,
I
please.
always try to leave podcasts with this similar message. Understanding that the situation that you're in right now, if you are unhappy and unfulfilled, I'll tell you that since I was a young kid, 15, 16, I had this conversation with myself that whatever I was in, if I was not happy and fulfilled, I owed it to myself to leave, and to find a path that would bring me there. Because trusting that being happy and fulfilled with what you're doing in your life will always guide you the right direction, and it most definitely will lead you down a very uncomfortable path. But I will say that you are in danger of living a life of comfort and a life of being super soft in your approaches, and that you will. The greatest fear is that you die without ever realizing your potential and what you could achieve in your life. And that is like the biggest fear that I have for people. And knowing what is on the other side of that slight discomfort of stepping out of this realm, I will continue to spread that message because it has changed my life and the people and the lives around me. So I encourage you to take that step. If you're thinking about it at all, you have a lot of time to be able to make it up if it doesn't go well. So that's what I just want to leave people with. And, I hope that reaches the right people.
I love it. Hey, boom, drop the mic right there. Awesome, man. Thank you so much, man. We'll talk to you later.
Thank
All right.
you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching the show. If you enjoyed that episode, make sure you like it, share it, and hit the subscribe button to get a new episode every week. We'll see you next time on the Connectable podcast.